Hey, Casibang's crew, welcome back. We are in Unit 7, talking about personality. This is video number 7. In this one, we are going to talk about humanistic theory of personality, and we're also going to talk about trait theory of personality. So first of all, humanism. Remember, we've been talking about humanism since the very beginning. Our humanistic psychologists believe that there is good in everyone, that we have the free will and the decision-making capabilities to do what is best for ourselves, to reach our fullest potential, to be doing what we were put on this earth to actually do. So the first concept that we talk about with humanistic theory is this idea of what is our real self? What things are important about our personalities right now? The good, the bad, the ugly, right? Everything, our real self. And then there is this idea of the ideal self. So who do we want to be? Who do we see ourselves as? Okay, here's a couple of examples of ideal self here. So the difference between our real self, what we are right now, all the good and the bad, and our ideal self, what we really want to be, that difference between those two concepts, the real self and the ideal self, is where humanistic psychologists say that's where our struggles are. When we have this idea of who we want to be and we're not quite there yet, that is where anxiety and some of those psychological struggles are happening, according to humanistic psychologists. So what did humanistic psychologists view as the central feature of personality? Okay, so we're talking about our personality and how it develops and why it is the way it is. So what did our humanistic psychologists view as the central feature of personality, and what was their goal in studying personality? So here's a couple of answers to that. So this innate drive toward growth. We are always growing. We're always trying to be better. We're trying to learn new things. Fulfilling our own unique potential. I said that, being the best that you can be, fulfilling that that desire, that wish, or that need, what you were put on this earth to do. Humans are naturally good. Okay, this was in opposition of Freud and Freud's theory that, you know, he pretty much was the doom and gloom guy. He said that humans were all bad, and we were also focused on aggression and sexual motivation, and everything was bad. Humanism takes that opposite spin and says, you know what? Humans are good. Sometimes we just go through difficult problems. And humanistic psychologists really strive to try and see the world through your eyes. So what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? How are you feeling? What emotions are you experiencing? So they really try to see the world through your eyes to be able to better help you. So the humanistic perspective developed as a reaction against the negativity of psychoanalysis, okay, Freud's personality beliefs, and that deterministic nature of behaviorism. Really believed in this idea of self-actualization. So this is that motivation to fulfill your potential. So down here I have this Army slogan, be all you can be. That is that humanistic perspective, okay, trying to reach your highest potential. We've already mentioned Abraham Maslow is the father of humanism. He studied self-actualization process in productive, healthy people. So people like Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi. So people that Maslow felt had reached their highest potential, were self-actualized human beings. Another humanistic psychologist that is really important is Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers is seen in this image of what is thought to be the first group therapy session. He was focused on growth, okay, that motivation to grow and be a better person and know more things, and fulfillment, okay, that idea of fulfillment of we are doing what we are actually supposed to be doing. So we find it very rewarding. We find it very fulfilling work. He believed that a psychologist or a humanistic therapist, when in therapy with people, needed to show these three things, okay? Genuineness, acceptance, and empathy. So he believed that the therapist should be genuine in their responses to what their patient is saying, that they should accept their patient for everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that they should show empathy. Right? That idea of empathy is being able to put yourself into someone else's shoes and really understand, really be able to experience what they are experiencing so that you can understand it from their point of view. He also had this idea of unconditional positive regard. So he also felt like, as humanistic therapists, that these therapists should always have this unconditional positive regard. No matter what you do, no matter what you say to me, that good, the bad, the ugly again, I am going to think of you positively. So I want you to stop and think for a second, who else in your life, or who in your life right now do you feel like has unconditional positive regard for you? Okay? Who loves you no matter what you do? Who loves you no matter the crazy things that you say? Who loves you no matter what grades you get, or what trouble you might get into? Or who loves you despite, if you're, top 10% in your class, okay? So all of the good and the bad parts of you, who is around in your life that loves you unconditionally? So there are criticisms, obviously criticisms of the humanistic perspective. So a lot of people say it's too rainbows and kittens. It's too good. It paints too rosy of a picture of human beings, and it doesn't really explain or understand or delve into some of the negative aspects of human nature, like, serial killers and people that just do bad, evil things just because. It doesn't really explain their behavior. People also said that their concepts are very vague and they're very subjective, okay, really hard to define. So what might seem like unconditional positive regard to one person could be different to another person. And that idea of self-actualization, again, can be different when you ask 50 people what that idea of self-actualization is. It can be different. Also, this idea of individualism can lead to self-indulgence, selfishness, and corruption. So this idea of individualism, being the best person that you can be for yourself, can then lead to these sort of negative things, being very selfish, being power hungry, or being corrupt in that you are focusing only on what is good for you and not really what's good for society or for the community. Okay, so the next one is the trait perspective. This is a little bit more modern idea of how our personality develops and what our personality consists of. So it talks about traits. So a trait is a characteristic pattern of behavior. So it isn't one single event or one single example. It is a pattern of behavior. So this is something that we see day after day, month after month, year after year. Okay, so in order for it to be considered a trait or an integral part of your personality, it has to be a pattern of behavior. It's also a disposition to feel and act. So this particular trait about your personality will give you an idea on how you should approach a situation or how you should act in a new situation for you. Traits, individual personality traits, are usually discovered through inventories or peer reports, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. So some ideas on traits: honest, dependable, moody. So think about some of the people in your life and what traits would you give as examples about them? Okay, do you know someone who is always on time? Doesn't matter the situation. It doesn't matter if it's to work, to class, or if it's just to, hanging out with a friend, but it's very important to them that they are always on time. Or do you have a friend who is always late? Again, doesn't matter the situation. It could be they're always late to work. They're always late to class. They're always late to, picking you up or hanging out or going out and having dinner or going out to a movie. They are always late. So those are some of those ideas on traits that we talk about. So there's a couple of initial historical trait theories that we talk about. The first one is by researcher Gordon Allport. And he said that we had 3 main traits. So he had what was called a cardinal trait. This is the most important defining trait of your personality. Okay, a cardinal trait. So for example, you are kind. And then there is a central trait that is very important to your personality. So this one might be you're punctual. And then there are secondary traits that are maybe not seen by everybody. Okay, these might be traits that are seen to only a close select few, or a close select few that share those personality traits with you. So a secondary trait might be adventurous. And then there is another trait theorist. His name is Raymond Cattell. He used statistics and statistical theory to come up with 16 different personality factors. So he said that our personality was dependent on 16 different personality factors. He said that everyone has these same characteristics. It's just on kind of a sliding scale. So a couple of examples of some of the 16 that he talked about: warmth, reasoning, emotional stability, dominance, liveliness. So he said that everyone had these characteristics, just some had it in larger quantities and some had it in smaller quantities. So if you think of like a number line or a scale, so you fall somewhere on that scale, whether you're on the low end of the scale or you're on the very high end of the scale, you are exhibiting some form of these different 16 personality factors. The trait, to continue with the trait perspective, Hans and Sybil Eisnick, a married couple, said that there were only 2 primary personality factors, and they were axes for describing variations within your personality. So these 2 primary factors were unstable and stable, and introverted and extroverted. Okay, so if you were an unstable extroverted person, then you might be exhibiting these signs. So touchy, restlessness, aggressive, excitable, changeable, impulsive, optimistic, or active. If you were stable and extroverted, you were very sociable, outgoing, talkative, responsive, easygoing, lively, carefree. You might show leadership. Down here in this quadrant, if you were stable but introverted, you are passive, careful, thoughtful, peaceful, controlled, reliable, even-tempered, and calm. And then introverted and unstable, moody, anxious, rigid, sober, pessimistic, reserved, unsociable, quiet. Let's go back for a quick step and let's define extroverted and introverted. These are probably things that you've heard before. If you take personality quizzes and stuff that you find on social media, you may have heard of introverted and extroverted. I want to make it very clear in the psychological community what these 2 terms mean. So it all has to do with how you find energy or how you rebuild your energy in your own person. So if you are the type of person that gains energy and gets really excited and really amped up and really pumped when you are around other people, you tend to be extroverted. If you are the type of person who has to sort of recharge your battery, you have to recharge your battery is the best way to say it. If you have to regain your energy by doing things that are more quiet pursuits, like if you like to be alone, if you want to read alone, or if you want to, take a nice warm bath, and that's what sort of recharges your energy after a really tough day, then you are more introverted. A lot of times, people that are shy are automatically assumed to be introverted, and people who are really talkative and are not afraid to talk in front of people are automatically assumed to be extroverted. And that is not necessarily the case. I'm sure if I asked most of you what you think I would be, I think probably a lot of you would say that I am extroverted. Because I like to talk. I like to get to know people. I'm a teacher. I'm up talking all the time, right? I'm not afraid to talk in front of crowds. I can get up on a stage and talk to people. But really, I am a very introverted person. By the time I'm done with my teaching day, I have expended so much energy talking to you guys and interacting with you guys and helping and teaching and just having conversations, that when I get home, I need a little bit of time to recharge my battery, to recharge my energy. And I do that by doing solo singular pursuits, like just, leave me alone and let me read my email for an hour, or let me read a book for an hour, or let me listen to this podcast for a little while, or I'm going to take a nice warm shower and just kind of re-energize myself silently, quietly in my own head. And that's that sort of difference between the introverted and extroverted. And we'll take a couple quizzes that'll kind of give you an idea on whether you're introverted or extroverted. Okay, so the current thinking on trait theory is the Big Five, and you absolutely need to know this. Put a big star next to this one. Okay, the Big Five trait theory on personality. So the Big Five are these 5 factors right here: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So we have the mnemonic device OCEAN, OCEAN, to help you remember these 5 factors. And you do have to remember these 5 factors. So that's why we give you that mnemonic device OCEAN. Okay, so on the openness scale, if you score very high on the openness scale, you tend to be creative, artistic, very curious, imaginative, non-conforming. Okay, you don't conform to all of the social norms and rules of society. If you are a low scorer, you tend to be more conventional, more a rule follower, more down to earth, a little bit less creative. On the conscientiousness scale, okay, high scores, very organized, reliable, neat, ambitious. Low scores, unreliable, lazy, careless, negligent, very spontaneous. Extroversion, okay, high scores, very talkative, optimistic, sociable, affectionate. Low scores, more reserved, comfortable being alone, stays in the background. Agreeableness, high scores. Here, good-natured, trusting, very helpful. Oop, sorry. Low scores, rude, uncooperative, irritable, aggressive, competitive. And then the last one, neuroticism, high scores, very insecure, worries a lot, very anxious, very temperamental. Low scores, calm, secure, relaxed, and stable. You guys are going to take the Big Five trait theory of personality in class tomorrow, so you guys can kind of see where you are. And the Big Five is pretty cool because, again, it's a sliding scale. So if you kind of think of a number line from 0 to 100, it's going to give you a sliding scale and tell you where you're at on each of these. And you might score toward the middle. On the Big Five for extroversion, I score toward the middle. On the introverted side, so the low scorer side, okay, but I am more toward the middle because I am really talkative. I am really sociable. I am very affectionate, okay? So it does give you sort of a scale of where you score. How do trait theorists assess your personality? So we talked about this when we talked about psychoanalysis. So the biggest personality inventory that's used by trait theorists is the MMPI-2. That's just because it's the second version, okay? So the MMPI-2. It is the most commonly used personality inventory, and it is used by psychologists and psychiatrists to spot abnormal behavior patterns. This is the Minnesota multiphasic test. There is also a Myers-Briggs test, and again, we're going to take a version of this, and this was developed by Carl Jung. Remember him from the Neo-Freudians. Okay, so on our Myers-Briggs, the first criterion is extroversion or introversion, okay? So again, the source and the direction of a person's energy expression. So an extrovert's source and direction of energy expression is mainly the external world, other people, okay? While an introvert has a source of energy in their internal world, okay? Doing things solo and alone. Second criterion is sensing and intuition. So it represents the method that someone perceives information. So sensing means that a person believes information that he or she receives directly from the external world, so like your senses. Intuition means that a person believes information that they receive from their internal world, so their imaginative world. Third criterion is thinking or feeling. This represents how a person processes information. So thinking means that a person makes a decision mainly through logic, thinking things through step by step, where feeling means that they usually make decisions based on emotion. And then the fourth criterion is judging and perceiving. So this reflects how a person implements the information that she's processed. So judging means that a person organizes their life events and sticks to their plan. And perceiving means that they will improvise, or they will tend to look for alternative options. So again, we are going to take a version of the Myers-Briggs. So we're taking a version, we're not taking the real thing, because Myers-Briggs can only be given by someone that is certified to be able to give the test. So usually it's psychologists and psychiatrists. It can be human resources personnel in businesses. So I have had the actual real version of the Myers-Briggs for a company that I used to work for a long time ago. It was something that we did as a management exercise. So if you come across on social media, hey, take this Myers-Briggs test, it's not the official real one. It is a version of it. And that's what we're going to take. We're going to take a version of it just because it'll give you a little bit of information about your own personalities. But you may have taken a version of it if you have a 4-digit, I am INFJ. So if you have that 4-digit INFJ, then you've taken some version of a Myers-Briggs test. So current thoughts on trait theory. So it's on this discussion on trait situation interaction. So in different situations, will that particular trait always act the same? So what criticisms or criticizers say is that circumstances can influence the way your trait is expressed. So if I am, in a classroom surrounded by 30 students, I am more extroverted. But when I am at home by myself, I am definitely more introverted. Or if I am in a room with a bunch of people that I do not know, I am definitely much more introverted. So that's how that the situation can affect how that trait is expressed. Cross-cultural research, they researched 11 different cultures, and they did find that all 5 of those trait dimensions from the Big 5 trait theory were identified in each one of those cultures. So is it because, parents are treating their children the same way in those different cultures, and that's why traits appear in all those different cultures? Or is it because those traits are genetically based? Right, so that's a lot of research on the big trait theory right now is kind of around that. Like, why are we finding these same traits in these different cultures? Are parenting habits similar across these cultures, or is it really a genetic thing that we're born with these 5 traits? All right, that is it for humanistic and for trait theory. I know that was a little bit of a long video. Tomorrow in class should be really fun. We're going to take a lot of these personality inventories. You should learn a lot about your personality tomorrow in class. Please, if you have any questions, make sure that you bring them in. Bye, guys.